Hey everyone, welcome to today's watch presentation. Before we jump into it, let me give you a wrist check. This is a really interesting watch that I have on loan from a friend of mine from Amin Reviews. This is his own Gorilla Fastback GMT. Such an interesting, bold, wildcard watch. A full review on this is coming pretty soon. I shot the macro video for this earlier today. And yeah, it's really fun. But today we're taking a look at a Microbrand based out of New Zealand that I have no experience with previously. I've heard of this brand, but I've never seen one in hand, in the metal, so to speak. So Mike from Draken Watches in New Zealand sent me a fun kit here. We're gonna be highlighting the new Benguela diver here today. And then you'll also see there is a Kalahari next to it, the DLC coated Kalahari with the sand dial, fully loomed dial, power reserve indicator, micro date disc. He's included this one complimentary as a thank you for doing this presentation. And as always, I always gift the gift watches to a member of my Patreon group. Just no strings attached. A thank you for being a part of the groups, for for the support and all of that stuff. So if you guys are interested, a link to my Patreon group is in the description. We're going to be doing this no strings attached giveaway here real soon. But I want to talk about the subject of today's video, which is the Benguela from Draken. Now I have the green version. You guys can see it comes with a green strap, and Mike also included a contrast orange stitched leather strap, which I have not placed on the watch, in honesty. I'm a bracelet guy, and this one is particularly hefty. And actually, let me just show you the clasp. I'm sure a lot of you guys will be familiar with this clasp system. It's a push button release, and then there is the micro adjustment extension system, which is always nice. And then let's take a look at the case back while we've got it in this position. A very dramatic 3D case back with a number of different finishes. Draken, loud and proud in the center with tentacles rising out of some turbulent water there. So I will say it's not too sharp. As I've had this on wrist, I haven't noticed any hot spots, but it is very detailed, as you guys can see. On this side of the case, we have a helium release valve there. We have a loomed signed crown at the 4 o'clock position. I very much am a fan of crowns at the 4 o'clock position that Seiko has really kind of made famous and popular with large, hefty sport watches, divers. And so this has that same style or that architecture when it comes to the case and the execution. The case is entirely sand blasted. It's a matte finish. You'll see that on the bezel, on the case, on the bracelet, on the clasp. Really, the only thing is the case back carries some other textures as well, some brushing, but most of the watch is matte finish. And we have a dome sapphire crystal that, in my experience, is it's the most dramatic distortions that I've ever gotten on a watch from an oblique angle here like this. You really get some fun distortions, and that's nice. And then you'll see Draken engraved in the side of the case, very similar to what Blancpain does with the 50 fathoms. I think most people know Invicta for doing that, even though they were not the first ones to engrave the brand on the side of the case. That is present, here on this Draken. Now, let's talk a few specs, and then we'll do some macro shots. We'll talk about the pros and the cons. We'll get into all the details, and we'll be real objective here. Even though we're getting a freebie watch for giveaway, we're not going to shy away from negative elements in this presentation. I know you guys really appreciate that. So 500 meters of water resistance. We have a sandwich style multi-layer dial here with applied blasted markers. So that's actually really interesting. I think that's pretty fun. We have X1 Old Radium Superluminova, and one of the things that I like about this, outside of the large triangle in the bezel, the loom sign crown, as you'll notice, even the date disc, or the date wheel, is loomed, which is, I don't know, I think that's pretty fun. That's a very uncommon thing to see. Now, dimension-wise, we have 43 millimeters in diameter, 52.3 millimeters in overall lug-to-lug length, and that is done from the center of these slightly curved hooded lugs here. So it's a hefty watch. It's a substantial watch. It's a fairly tall watch, but it still wears pretty well. And my wrists are 7.25 inches in circumference, just for your excuse me, just for your guys' reference. Now we have 15 millimeters in height, 22 millimeters for the lug width, and the crystal, that domed crystal with crazy distortions here, is 3.7 millimeter thick, and there is anti-reflective treatment on the underside of the crystal. But I've got to say, that is my criticism really of the Benguela, is the ARC, I don't know if it's very functional, especially in natural light. You guys can see here, you're seeing my Canon, my camera reflected almost perfectly in this crystal, and we're also getting a little bit of the light behind. If I turn it this way, you guys can see studio lights, window and studio lights that way. So it could be a lot better, and I think that would enhance the day-to-day practicality, the user experience, the consumer experience of wearing and using and owning this Microbrand, this Draken, this Benguela. So I'd love to see better anti-reflective treatment, because it can be a bit distracting, and occasionally, especially under the tree where I get my wrist rolls and stuff, the distractions coming from the crystal, I mean, it's hard for my camera to focus in on the details of the dial. Now, that aside, we've got screw links in this non-tapering bracelet. I showed you guys the clasp, the case back. I showed you the extra straps here. Let's go in on a macro level, and we'll do some macro video of the dial. So this is, like I mentioned, a sandwich construction, multi-layer dial. We have an inner concentric ring here where the text is for Draken, for Benguela, done in orange. And there is some accenting with an orange tip of the seconds hand. And one of the things that I love is Mike, he just went all out with the matte finishing. So you'll see the matte applied markers, you'll see the matte finishing on the handset, on the seconds hand, in addition to, you know, the case and the bracelet and the bezel and all of that stuff. And as far as quality here, I think the printing could be a little bit tidier here. I'm not going to complain too much, but I think overall this is very clean. I've certainly seen brands come across my desk, from mainstream to micro brands, that are full of rough edges on the hands, dust or particulates in the dial, and I'm not really seeing that here. Apart from wanting a little bit tidier printing on the logo and the text elements, I think this is actually pretty solid and pretty well done. Now let's zoom back out, and we'll talk about a couple things. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, you can get blue, black, or green options. Every one that you get will come with a complimentary rubber strap in the isofrane style, even though this is not an isofrane strap. This is just a replica of the isofrane. And so you'll get that. You'll get a nice leather travel case here. There's the paperwork over on the right side. And then you can opt for either a Seiko-made movement or a 2824-2 movement. The ETA obviously is going to be a little bit more expensive. So depending on which level you decide to back, you're going to be spending anywhere from $400 roughly to $600 for a Draken Benguela. And I think for the amount of stainless steel here, for the water resistance, for the sapphire, for the lume, the disc, the extra straps and everything, to me this is on par with other options from the Microbrand scene at its price point. And I certainly respect the fact that they're very original in the design language. I think, you know, something like this would be hard to find from a mainstream brand, with the screw links, with the adjustability, with the sapphire, with the loomed sandwich dial, the applied markers. You seem to get more when it comes to specs and elements with the Microbrand watch than you do from a mainstream brand watch, but you don't necessarily get the name recognition and the history that you would get with, say, a Seiko or with the Hamilton. And so I know a lot of my viewers, you're heavy into the value, you're heavy into Microbrand watches, and I think if you fall into that category, you're really going to enjoy the Draken Benguela, because this thing, you know, inspires confidence. It's hefty. I look at this and, you know, I'm not afraid to take this in water, or to scratch it up, or to take it camping or kayaking or hiking. I just, you know, I think this is a good tool watch, a good sport watch. that I wouldn't worry about to the same degree like if I was wearing a Seamaster or a Black Bay or something that I would be more conscious of with my day-to-day activities, if that makes sense. So guys, that's my presentation on the Draken Benguela. Again, this one here is the Kalahari that has been secured for giveaway from Draken. So big thank you to Mike in New Zealand for making that happen. That's just really kind of you, and I really appreciate that. So guys, let me, oh, you know what? I almost missed the most important thing. Guys, when we're looking at a dive watch, we got a fidget spin. We gotta check out the action. This is great action. Nice and loud, absolutely rock solid, no backplay. And it's nice to turn quickly or slowly. So man, I can't believe I forgot that. That's like the most important thing in a dive watch review. So anyways, that aside, let me know if I forgot something. If you have any questions, all of the links will be in the description for the Kickstarter for reserving whichever version you're drawn to, getting some more information, and then of course the link to the Patreon group. So thanks for being with me today, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.